So I want to bring in the author of Vengeance, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich is with us, and you are out with yet another new book, Vengeance. Great to see you, Newt. Thank you so much for joining us. This is focused on North Korea.
Right. It really tries to get across the core idea. What if terrorists were to swap 2 supertankers of oil with the North Koreans in return for nuclear material, not a nuclear bomb, but nuclear material to make dirty bombs, to try to hit American cities and European cities. And I think it's Brooke Grant, who's our major in the Marine Corps, who's been our character now for 3 novels. But I think it's important to say 2 things to the American people out of Vengeance. One is, you can't just assume if you can stop missiles that you're stopping weapons, because your opponent has many ways of delivery. And the other is, you can't just focus vertically on one place. You can't say, here's our North Korean policy, because the North Korean policy relates to Iran, where they've been selling missiles, relates to Syria, where they've tried building a nuclear reactor until the Israelis bombed it. And there are these networks of opposition, and we really are not today designed mentally or structurally to have a national security apparatus that thinks of the whole network as a threat. So I think Vengeance, in that sense, it's both a lot of fun as an adventure book, but it also has underlying it some pretty serious public policy lessons.
And these are serious times. I mean, whether it's North Korea or, the terrorists or, the policies that they're trying to achieve in Washington, we're at a critical moment in time right now.
I think the North Korean nuclear program is the greatest danger since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. I think people really need to understand that we've had, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama all tried. In every case, they talked while the North Koreans developed missiles and bombs.
Right.
We're now at a really critical point. I don't see an easy out. I think there's some things that could be done. All of them involve risk. But I do think that the administration, the Trump administration, has been very good at dramatically tightening up on the sanctions and pushing the Chinese into doing things that a year ago they would never have dreamed of doing.
And by the way, getting China and Russia on board with these sanctions against North Korea was a huge deal for Nikki Haley. Let me talk about domestic issues for a moment, and that is tax reform. The president's going to be delivering a message today in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. You've said that you're calling for tax cuts, you're calling for reform. Obviously, you were knee-deep in that in 1986, in the 1980s, and you got it done. Will they be able to get this done?
Well, I'm more worried than I was 6 weeks ago, and I'm worried in part because of the calendar. I think they have to get this done by Thanksgiving, because they need to have a first and second quarter that's booming so that people are voting on jobs and prosperity next summer. I mean, if Republicans go into the fall election next year with good economic growth, good jobs numbers, increased take-home pay, less taxes, I carry around this is the Paul Ryan. This is Paul Ryan's postcard.
Thank you for putting your mic back on. We got it.
Anyway,
this is the postcard that we're going to do our taxes on.
Right.
Let's check this out.
85 or 90% of all Americans will be able to do their taxes on a postcard.
And this is what Paul Ryan gave you?
Yeah, Paul Ryan gave me that. And I think it's a great concept because it says to you, one, there are 5 billion hours a year spent on tax regulations by people.
Right.
And 2, you get a secondary tax cut of not having to pay a tax lawyer, a tax accountant, or a tax preparer. So I think there's a good story here, but frankly, this little skirmish between the president and Senator Corker doesn't help any.
Well, that's what I want to say to you, because we all watched what happened with health care. The House came out with the bill. The Senate didn't even look at it. They wanted to start from scratch and do their own bill, and they failed. Are we going to see the same failure when it comes to tax reform?
Well, I'm very worried. I mean, look, I have a simple model. I'm thinking about, I've done a course on Defending America that's online at defendingamericacourse.com, and I'm now tempted to do a course on how to legislate.
Well, why don't you go back to Washington?
Well, I talked to them. Some of the pieces they don't get, and I don't understand why they don't get it. For example, we should know right now what's the size of the small business tax break, because if the average small business knew it was X thousands of dollars, they would be calling their Democrat and Republican Senate and House members and saying, "Hey, I'd like the money."
Yeah.
But
we don't know the brackets.
Of those things.
We don't know. We know it's 12%, 25%, and 35%. Well, what's the income? Who falls in 25%? Who falls in 35%?
So the problem is we're at a stage where we ought to be in the communications business. They're still in the policy business.
Right. And the president is having these skirmishes with Senator Corker. Does he need that vote? We know what happened with John McCain. John McCain was angry, and a lot of people think that's why he voted no.
Well, it might be. Look, politics at one level is very personal.
Right.
And you know, people who run for the U.S. Senate actually think they're senators. And they actually think that there's a certain dignity to being a senator and that they ought to be treated with a certain level of respect.
And I don't think they care if this president is successful or not, Newt. I don't. They're there for 6 years. They think they're going to outlive him.
But the trick is they do care that the country is successful.
Yeah.
And the president needs to shift his focus off of personality and go to the country and do exactly what Reagan did. Reagan was very disciplined. Reagan would never have picked fights with people whose votes he needed.
Can he do that?
I don't know. I think this is one of the great tests of the Trump presidency. Can he find the discipline to focus on getting the job done and to realize that leading the country is bigger than personality, and it requires a kind of discipline he's never had in his entire life. And this is a really hard business.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to ask you about growth in the 80s, because I was astounded to remember that in 1982, it was or 1984, GDP was 7.3%.
Yeah. And I think, look, I think Trump can deliver 4 or 5 or even 6% growth. You take the trade deals he wants. You take things like the Saudis buying $400 billion in American contracts. You take the deregulation, where Trump has been the most effective deregulatory president in American history. Next year will be the first year in American history that there are fewer pages of regulation.
That's a big deal.
Astonishing. Well, it just lifts billions of dollars of burden off the economy.
Yeah.
So you add to that a tax break. You look at the conservative judges he's appointed. Trump is right at the edge of really, truly being Reagan-like in his ability to get this thing moving. But the linchpin is the tax bill. They have got to get the tax bill done.
Yeah, for sure. And if they were to do it, you're going to actually see a movement in economic growth.
Absolutely.
I think that's why we've already seen 3.1% on GDP.
That's right.
Newt, it's great to see you. By the way, you wrote Vengeance. Your wife, Callista, wrote Remember the Ladies, Callista Gingrich. You guys are writing books like mad. Congratulations.
It gives us weird vacations.
She's got to come back on the show soon, Callista. Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Mr. Speaker. Always a pleasure to see you. Newt Gingrich there.